From Feebas to Magikarp, I want to take a look at some of the rarest Pokemon, the ones that have like a 1% encounter rate or that are just impossible to get in this video. If you guys leave a like on this one, we might do a part 2 with even more stuff. So, you ready for the undisputed king of rare encounters? Well, meet Torchic. Wait, what? How could this KFC recipe possibly have the rarest of all encounters? Well, let me say it this way. If you're old, like me, you might remember the beloved Poke Walker gadget, which was exclusive to Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and was essentially a little Tamagotchi. And for those of you guys who do not know, those were like these step trackers and these little toys which you would have like a little monster or animal inside of that you would feed and try to keep alive. And basically what they did was the Poke Walker was introduced with Heart Gold, Soul Silver, where you could load a Pokemon onto it in a similar way. You would then just walk around with it in the real world to get some items or additional Pokemon for your Pokedex in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. However, there is also a bunch of rare Pokemon which are really quite rare to say the least, and some of these would be encountered only inside of the actual Poke Walker. Now, Torchic, as I mentioned before, however, might just be the tip of the iceberg. Now, it's only available on a specific Japanese-only event route. Yes, you heard me right, a specific route. There you have a 1 encounter every time after performing about 200 steps in real life, with your Poke Walker in your pockets. On this specific route though, Torchic has a 1% encounter rate, which means 1% every 200 steps in real life. Not even Pokemon Go is this cruel to us gamers, but it gets worse. You see, in order to even activate that 1% encounter chance, you have to walk 10,000 steps on this day before. As long as you have less than 10,000 steps recorded on a day, the 1% chance does not even exist. Also, it resets every day, meaning if you don't get your Torchic on the exact day you walked more than 10,000 steps on it, you have to walk these 10,000 steps just to activate the chance again the next day. Sadly, the Poke Walker Pokemon have pretty much predetermined values, making it impossible to specifically hunt for a shiny or a female one of these, but it's more than rare as is. So this has to be one of the most rare Pokemon that you could ever possibly get. And it's kind of insane. I've been kind of considering sometimes maybe I should find my own Poke Walker and maybe do some real life hunting streams for this Torchic. It could be pretty fun. If you guys actually caught one of these, you should let me know in the comment section down below. Feebas from Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. It's found on Route 119. Now, Feebas only appears specifically on 6 random water tiles out of 437. See, these tiles are different for every game save. While its encounter rate on these tiles is relatively high, finding the correct tiles can take hours. Like just going through this specific location and trying to find these, well, specific tiles that are 6 of them out of 437 can be a little bit time consuming, which is a little bit painful to deal with. And speaking of Feebas, again, in Pokemon Platinum, we have a similar situation. See, in Pokemon Platinum, Feebas appears in Mount Coronet, and it can only be found by fishing in 4 specific tiles, so that's 2 less than before, on the lower levels where water is present. Now, the 4 tiles are randomized once every single day, so unlike the previous version in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, where the actual tiles will be determined on save file, here they're actually randomized every single day. While the area is smaller than the area in Gen 3 was, encountering one of these is basically a glorified sushi ingredient. It's actually just as hard as the first time around, if not even harder than it was in those games. This is because Game Freak found it would be funny to give them a 6% encounter rate, on top of needing to find one of these 4 random tiles in Diamond and Pearl. So yeah, meaning not only did you need to find the tiles, but you also had to fish like 50 times on average to be sure that the tile you just fished inside of isn't one of the 4. So in just layman's terms, you basically have to find 4 tiles that are randomized every single in-game day, which in itself is already, or rather every single day in general, which in itself is already trouble. But then on top of that, you only have 6% chance of actually encountering it, so it's even worse than it was in Ruby and Sapphire. Speaking of Diamond and Pearl still, you also have Munchlax. See, Munchlax is one of the hottest Pokemon to encounter. It spawns on honey trees, but only on 4 specific trees across the game world. Now, these specific trees are randomized per save file, and the encounter rate is just 1%. Yeah, making it extremely rare without external tools to locate the trees. Heracross could also be mentioned here because it has a 1% encounter rate on any honey tree, while Munchlax only has 1% encounter rate at 4 of these honey trees, which are randomized completely. So, generally speaking, pretty hard to get either of those two, but Munchlax in particular, just incredibly hard to actually find. Next up, we have, again, Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. I'm sensing a trend here, but we've got Manaphy, which can only be obtained by completing a special post-game mission in Pokemon Rangers. Yeah, not even in the mainline Pokemon games. Rather, you had to play Pokemon Rangers and then transfer the Manaphy egg to one of the mainline Pokemon games afterwards, that being Diamond, Pearl, or Platinum. Now, this method of obtaining Manaphy was unique to the Ranger games, and it was locked to, and I'm not even kidding when I say this, 1 per physical game cartridge. Meaning, you can't even complete the game a second time to obtain a second egg. In other words, if you want this Manaphy today, legitimately speaking, you literally have to spend hundreds to obtain a copy with an unused Manaphy egg, or to get lucky on the flea market roulette table. So basically, you literally cannot get this thing nowadays unless you want to spend a lot of money on an unopened copy of Pokemon Rangers, which is kind of crazy. Now, toning it a bit down, we've got Authentic Sinistea. Now, in Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield, Authentic Sinistea is more or less a rare variant of the regular Sinistea that can be only identified by checking the underside of the teacup for a special authenticity stamp. The encounter rate for Authentic Sinistea is about 1% in Glimwood Tangle. This makes finding it just incredibly tedious task for collectors, and breeding Authentic Sinesteas is also impossible, meaning it has to be a wild encounter. Of course, not as crazy as some of the stuff we've mentioned so far, but nonetheless still a very difficult Pokemon to find. And since we're talking about it, what about Authentic Poltergeist? Well, in Pokemon Scarlet Violet, Poltergeist is a relative of Sinistea that also returns with an authentic stamp variant. The process to find one is pretty much the same as with Sinistea, except you're going to have to be specifically in Kitakami to do it. So that's pretty much the simple explanation of this one. Did you guys know that in Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, Dragonair is found in the Safari Zone by fishing with the Super Rod? Its encounter rate is officially 1%, making it one of the rarest Safari Zone Pokemon to actually find. Now, successfully catching Dragonair is also a challenge in itself because Safari Balls have a low catch rate, and Dragonair is prone to fleeing. To make matters even worse, due to a coding error, it's literally on the hands of Game Freak, Dragonair encounter rate is in reality even slightly below 1%. This is due to, well, more or less an oversight. If you wanted to shiny hunt, for example, the Dragonair specifically, the chance to encounter one would be about 1 in 819,650. And you probably wouldn't even be able to catch it. It is incredibly rare to actually find. Of course, you can get Dragonites and whatnots in different wares and Dratinis, but specifically this Dragonair is incredibly rare. Next, we're going to go back to Generation 1 in particular. We're looking at Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow version. In these, Porygon is a special Pokemon because Porygon can only be obtained by purchasing them from the Game Corner exchange. There's no wild encounter for them either. So, yeah, what's the deal then? Well, back then, you couldn't just buy these coins in the Game Corner. You had to get lucky every now and then and spend some time at these slot machines just to get this thing. Depending on your luck, this could take hours, days, well, even years if you really had shit luck. But usually, if you were a lucky player, you should be able to get it relatively easily. But if you were just on a bad losing streak and you just weren't able to win the coins, you could probably never get this thing. Then we're going to move over to Generation 3 and Wailord. See, Wailord is a weird one, but if you wanted the Wailord in Gen 3, there were more or less 2 options. Option number 1 was the option any sane person would go for. Just catch any wild Wailmer and level it up to level 40. Of course, logical way to do it, right? You just catch one and level it up and evolve it into Wailord at level 40. However, there's also an option for the more, well, self-hating individuals among us, just like myself. But basically, there is another way to get it, specifically and only on Route 129. You see, on 129, you can encounter a wild Wailord without having to evolve a Wailmer, but the fun part is, it has a 1% chance encounter rate while you are surfing. So, generally speaking, you're going to struggle to find it, but if you do manage to find it, you'll be one of the lucky few people that got a 1% encounter rate Wailord. And it doesn't even end there. If you want a shiny one, it's going to be even harder. Then we have the ruler of the resort area. See, in Pokemon Platinum, you have a little pond where you can fish up Magikarps and Gyarados. However, there's a special twist to these Magikarps here. Now, if we have a look at the encounter table for this area, we'll see that there's basically 5 whole encounter slots for Magikarps of varying level ranges. The chances are a 40% chance of encountering a Magikarp with the level range of 40 to 60, a 40% chance of encountering a Magikarp with the level range of 30 to 70, a 15% chance of encountering a Magikarp with the level range of 20 to 80, and a 4% chance of encountering a Magikarp with the level range of 10 to 90. But it doesn't end there. You have a 1% chance of encountering a Magikarp with the level range of 1 and 100. Therefore, you have to go through 2 times 1 in 100 chances to encounter the level 100 Magikarp. Now, to get the right level slot, that includes a level 100 Magikarp and 1 to get the right level at that specific slot, making the probability of encountering a level 100 really anything from 1 to 9 and 91 to 100 for that matter, a 1 in 10,000 chance. So you'd assume that a level 100 Magikarp would be the rarest, right? Well, actually no. There's a way to boost your odds to around 1 in 200 by using a Pokemon with the ability Hustle, Vital Spirit, or Pressure in your first slot. Doing this, you have a 50% chance to encounter the Pokemon with the highest level in its encounter slot, meaning you have a much higher chance of actually running into a level 100. That means that there is something more rare, specifically a level 1 or a level 99 Magikarp. That is the real challenge here, since there's no way to artificially boost the odds for these, meaning that if you want any of these, you're going to be sticking around for a long time fishing until you run into them. So yeah, a level 1 or a level 99 Magikarp are by far some of the rarest things you can ever find in Pokemon. Of course, you can catch these Pokemon in regular ways, like everything we talked about are Pokemon you can generally catch, but these are the hardest to catch in their specific instances. A level 1, a level 99, these are the hardest. The Torchic, specifically, you can get a Torchic just by playing Ruby and Sapphire, obviously, but that particular Torchic is very rare and very special because of how hard it is to get. And that's it. That is the video. If you guys have any suggestions for any Pokemon that I missed, which are super rare, please let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you in the next one.